All right, there we go. Rudy, thank you for coming on, man. I really do appreciate it. I've been listening to your stuff a lot lately. I really like it, man.
Thank you. I don't know. Yeah, it's we're all doing our own thing, I guess, and I'm just sharing that music with people, I guess.
I
Been
like
doing it
what you're doing,
doing
man.
it for a long
Y-
time.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Really really good stuff. But I want to start here. You're originally from Long Beach, right?
Yeah, I was born in South LA, and then when I was 5 or so, we relocated to Long Beach, but that's where I like spent, you know, all my schooling, like elementary, middle school, high school. So and then when I was 18, we left for Vegas for a couple years. They stayed, and I returned to Long Beach on my own to continue to pursue music. So then I lived there for another like 12 years almost, which
Oh,
is kind of
wow.
crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, but like on my own as like an adult,
Yeah.
or
How
learning to be an adult.
how different was that kind of moving back by yourself?
Well, I mean, it's like, anyone who like moves out of their parents' house like for the first time, um, it's like that big leap of faith. So, you kind of have to like, I think I did it at a relatively young age. I was like 19 and a half. I don't know. But it was, I had like 500 bucks. I had a 95 Camry, and I drove back to Long Beach, slept on my friend's floor for a while. And then I got a job at Whole Foods working produce. And like the first few years was just like learning how to survive and all that good stuff. And still working on music. And then it just took me a little while after that to like settle in and then really like start focusing. Just, all right, I got to put some music out. But yeah, I guess in high school I had a band, and then we had put out a record as well then. Um, yeah.
Oh, wow. You guys got pretty far for a high school band to put out a record.
Yeah, my band in high school was called Minus Radio. Um, we toured all the way up to Bellingham, Washington once. Um, it was like very noisy art rock experimental. Um, the person who recorded us was actually Bob Bruno from Best Coast.
Yeah,
Before
good
before he
guy.
was even in Best Coast. Um, and I remember like at the time, Bob was, we recorded it, and then at the few weeks later when it was time to like mix it or whatever, um, my guitarist, he lived with Nels Klein at the time. Bob did, which was Nels Klein. He's one of my favorite guitarists. Has a career since like the '80s, but right now, most notably, like he's been in Wilco for like the last 10 years. Um, but anyway, so I remember Will, my guitarist at the time, he went to go mix it, but it was like during the week. So I was still a senior in high school. So my mom didn't let me like take the day off from school to go take the train up to LA to go mix this record. Um, just a funny side note. And I was like, oh man, like I really wanted to meet Nels Klein. But yeah, whatever. But yeah, so I've like I said, I just turned 34 this summer. So like the fact that when I was 17, that first record came out with like as a when I was in a band, I guess it kind of gives you perspective of like how long I've been at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. A good chunk of time now.
Literally like half my life now. So and
Wow.
then we played like me and my friends played our first show when we were like 15. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so you're like 18-ish when you're getting this record done. I mean, that's pretty big stuff going on for high school.
I mean, yeah, the fun part about it was that we didn't know, we were just doing versus like thinking. Like it was just like we were just active and we just were being creative. Like uh, I really like cherished that part of my life because I was just like I said, like it was more just like stream of consciousness, just versus like, oh, like I have to do this because I'm an artist on a label. It was just like, but those are like the building blocks of what you're always kind of like laying the foundation for what's to come.
Sure, sure. And then directly after high school, that's when you and your family moved to Las Vegas?
Yeah, yeah. And then so a year and a half in, I was like, well, um, it's chill here, but if I don't move back, to Long Beach, LA area, I felt like I wanted to play with certain people that I was friends with. I felt like if I truly wanted to like pursue music, that's where I needed to be. So I moved, yeah, so I moved back.
Wow. And then just going to Whole Foods in the spare time.
Well, I mean, it was like a 40 hours a week type of job. So
Wow.
I remember I'd have to like 6 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. every day. I mean, honestly, like I don't know if a lot of people talk about it or not, but like I've always been very like blue collar. Like I call myself a blue collar musician. Like I've never not had a job, like it's just something that maybe you just don't like post about really. Um it's a little bit more private, I guess. But yeah, like I've always had like I was a barista for 5 years. I was produce for 2 years. I even worked in like a Vietnamese kitchen. Like there's just a variety of jobs that I've had, and um, even to this day, to be honest. So like I think that's one thing maybe people don't know about or realize sometimes. But yeah, like on top of just trying to be creative and working on music, like just like also having jobs and stuff, it's a lot. I'm not trying to sound like I'm complaining, but it's a lot,
To
or like
juggle, sure,
Or
sure.
like one of my favorite moments ever was maybe 2016, around there. We played a show at the Echo in LA. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that
Yeah,
venue,
yeah.
but it's like a go-to venue, a relevant venue in LA, Echo Park area. So then it was a free Monday night show, but we were headlining. So we show up and I see like my name on the marquee, the Echo. That made me feel really good. And it was a pretty packed show. The night went well, but I guess I'm just trying to tell you like the funny part about it. Like the next morning, I'm back at I was working at this bar that also served food. But anyway, I had to be there like at 9, 10 in the morning. So here I am, like the very next morning from that show, like mopping the floors, you know, and then like you see like these business guys like walk by, and like they're just looking at you like, oh, like that's just some, you know, service industry cat like mopping the floor. And then in my head, I'm like, yeah, but you don't know that I just headlined the Echo last night. So it's like, but at the same time, it's very like keeps my feet on the ground. Like I'm like, yeah, bro, you just played the Echo, but now you're mopping the floor. Like so I feel like that stuff has always been really good about like keeping keeping my feet on the ground. And honestly, like there's no uh there's no more bigger of a turnoff for me than when I meet a musician and they're like arrogant, you're like or like too big headed. Like I'm like, all right, man, have fun with that, I'm gonna be over here.
Yeah. So distance yourself a bit from them. Yeah. Do you feel like it's important to have those kind of those experiences within music to like really make you still feel like a part of it? Like, man, like this is still what I'm, working at and have a goal that I'm reaching towards, but I'm still like doing these different jobs, or like music isn't my full-time thing. Do you feel like that's important for people?
um well, everyone has their own like journey, and I always say like don't ever compare your journey to someone else, or like you always have a different definition of what success is like versus, what is that to you, what does that mean to you. So but anyway, even though I do have the jobs and all that, like I still gear my life and my lifestyle and essentially everything about my life towards being involved with music. Like the jobs that I do have, I can only have them based on the fact that those, my bosses or whatever are aware that, yo, like if I have to go on tour, I'm going on tour. And whether it's a yes or a no, I'm still going. Like I've literally had to quit jobs before just because it wouldn't give me the time off. I'd be like, I'm sorry, but this is my real job. So yeah, like there's like sacrifice and this and that, but um to be honest, I can't wait to not have a regular job and just be able to just be in my studio as much as possible.
Sure, sure. What was the worst job you've had?
Um Probably being a dishwasher and then like having to do it like because we didn't have like a machine, so it was all by hand. And like I remember one night I was doing it on my birthday and all my friends were like at this party and I was like 20 or 21, but that was not, that was a bitter night for me or whatever. But yeah, that was probably my least favorite, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean that does sound like it's not the best one, to be honest.
Yeah.
But you don't live in Long Beach anymore, right?
No, I moved to Chicago in October of 2020 and just again just took another leap of faith and I'm sitting in my apartment here in Chicago right now.
Yeah, it's kind of a different scenery out there, yeah?
Yeah, and I think I needed it. I think after being in LA for so long, like I knew I wanted like if I wasn't a musician, I would have left light years ahead. Like that moment when I decided to move back to Long Beach to pursue music, if I wasn't a musician, that would have been the moment I would have just went like backpacking in South America or something like that. Like I've always had a big interest in just traveling and being nomadic. So to me, that was one of the bigger sacrifices of my life was staying in LA, Long Beach through my 20s to keep pursuing music because, time is of the essence and life is short. So um, I felt like I put some of that on the back burner in order to like my goal was to do it hand in hand and to like travel and play music at the same time. Like I had like a long-term goal. And as my 20s went by, I started to tour further and further, like by my once we got with Coal Mine, like finally hit the East Coast, finally hit Toronto, finally hit Vancouver, finally hit like Monterrey, Mexico, like finally hitting places out of the out of the country. And then the next goal for me is definitely Europe and then like South America um in terms of that. But yeah.
Awesome, awesome. What drew you to Chicago? Why'd you say, all right, that's where I'm going. That's the next place.
Well, like touring and stuff, it's kind of like you get to like flirt with different cities, just check them out, like just see what they're like. Not that you get to see the whole scope of them. So it was honestly a short list. I was like, Portland, I've already been there like 12 times. New York, too expensive. Austin, too hot in the summer. And there's all these other cool little places, but Chicago was so like dense and full of different neighborhoods. And so like to me, it's like you get that big city New York vibe, but also obviously like the economy is different over here. So like it's way more affordable for like an artist. And I just knew that I wasn't gonna get bored right away. Like it would take me a while to like really, really sort out the whole city and like make sense of it in my head. And just relocating to a different place was just something I needed, like a fresh start.
Sure, sure. How did you go about breaking into the music scene over there? Was it like a difficult task, or did you just like find your niche? You're like, all right, this is where I need to be at the moment.
Um, I just knew that I wanted to come here and in a way, like, almost on some like conqueror vibes, just like, all right, like I'm like if I did what I did over there, I I felt like I can do that here too. Um, and just trying to play the shows that I want to play with the bands that I want to play with. And I feel like I've kind of like shown people hear what my intentions are, like the kind of shows I want to be playing and the venues I want to be playing at. The honestly, the biggest factor was just, through a pandemic, it's hard to meet people and stuff like that. So since I moved on my own, I left all my friends and musicians back home in LA. So I think the biggest factor in all this was how awesome it's been to like have met the musicians that I did meet that now form part of my band, where like I feel like I have a great connection with them, and I genuinely feel like they're one of the stronger outfits that I've had. Um, and I can't wait to take them on the West Coast when we go in November on tour to like show everyone like, look, check these guys out, like they shred, you know.
Right, right. So you started from scratch, moving out there. You're like, all right, I need to formulate a new group of people to play with.
Basically, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That seems like a, I mean, that's like a conqueror thing in you. That's like that's the
But
first goal.
I with my experience of playing with different people, like my band has never been quite like, it's not like a complete rotating cast every time, but I've always kind of had to hodgepodge, oh, this person with this person. But it's like short but sweet list of people, So I see it a lot like, I'm a huge football soccer fan. So I see it as like from like a coach perspective, like, oh, if I put this person with this person, it's gonna work, or like Mark E. Smith from The Fall also made like a metaphor towards like soccer, saying like, because he put out like over 30, 40 records, and a lot of the records had various lineups, and his tours would be very like, I don't think he held the same band together for like one record cycle or two, so like he would say like, having a band is like a lot like a soccer team, like if you're fit to play, you're fit to play, and if not, you're not,
Right.
so i I think that it's always quality over quantity for sure. And it's just a matter of me getting along with those people as well. You're going to be in a van with them for a few weeks. Like, you're going to want to be around someone you get along with and you can be friends with. That's important to me, not just like some stranger.
You can find them in Craigslist, but I don't think the hang is very good. It's kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
depends.
Right. It's a hit or miss.
Sure, sure. How much does location affect the music that you're making and the sound of it?
I think like that's still yet to be determined in a way. I am excited about the few songs I have written here, and one of them is actually going to be on the new record coming out next year. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's inevitable. Like even just the fact that we recorded the record in Austin, for example, I'd never recorded anything in Texas prior to that. All my recordings were in California, so even just that in and of itself, like being in a humid place in July, like, but yeah, like being, for example, here in like last winter, obviously it's pretty rough in the winter, like here in Chicago. So I feel like some of the songs I made were very like acoustic and sad sounding, but yeah, like also I feel like this place really suits me well because I love like old soul, and like the history of soul music in this town is like incredible. um and it's a huge jazz town as well, and a lot of my musicians play are like fluid jazz players as well, and getting to meet that crowd here in the city, like there, Chicago has no shortage of talent, that's for sure, and then I don't know if it's really influenced my music yet, or maybe it never will, or at some point it will, but like house music has such a history here, and I felt like so naive or just ignorant to it before, because I just kind of always categorized everything as EDM, you know but it's not. Like house music has a completely different sound, and it has like decades and decades of history here. So like like I go to a barbecue or something or to the bar and I hear like I'm like, oh, I like that song. Like now I can like really like I'm like, oh, I know when a house song is playing or like there's like nostalgic hits of Chicago, like that like maybe if you play that same song in like you know, wherever else, other state or other city, it would be like, oh, whatever. But if you play it here, like everyone loses their shit because it's like that's the banger, like that everyone knows that song. But so it's cool to learn the different histories of like just the different music that people like here. And like I spend a lot of time in a Puerto Rican neighborhood, so like when you're walking down the street at like 10 a.m. in the morning and someone's like cleaning their house and their windows are open, but they're blasting salsa music out of their window, like you just don't get that a lot in LA or Long Beach, to be honest. Like
Sure.
so yeah, there's so much to absorb. I mean, and that's that's my one of my favorite parts, like trying something new, being somewhere new, you know.
On a
It's good.
journey. I like
Yeah,
it.
it's good for your brain, I think.
Absolutely. You write songs both in English and Spanish, right? I mean, like you know, for I mean, I know that you know, but maybe some of the viewers don't know. But yeah, Rudy does write songs in English and in Spanish. Um, are you more prone to write songs in English or Spanish, or it's like whatever the song calls for, that's what you're gonna write it in?
Yeah, I try not to think about it too hard. Um, Sometimes like the thought, like for instance, like if sometimes I'll think of a phrase in Spanish and then maybe that'll jumpstart an idea of a song. But a lot of times I just look at it like too, like phonetically, like maybe in this tune the syllables will bounce off better in Spanish versus that tune, the syllables will bounce off better in English. I don't know. So sometimes it could be very pragmatic, like and not like a simple, logic to it. But yeah, like I think I like the fact that I can't give you a straight answer because I I I don't really want to like ever like be so like rigid when it comes to, oh, I want to I want this to be in English or Spanish.
Right? You don't want to box yourself in. But
Yeah, like
I do
at
need to
least just
answer
a,
that, Rudy. So like what is it? What is the actual
and then I don't know if you noticed, but on the record too, on the Tender Epoch record, there's a song in Catalan as well. So it's called Caballet del Mar, which
I
means
did not catch that. No, but
it means seahorse. Um, but yeah, so in Spanish that's Caballo del Mar, but in Catalan it's Caballet del Mar. And I was like, wow, like that just sounds like the title to a song. And then so then that's what sprung that idea. And then I definitely had my friend from Barcelona like proofread my lyrics and like help edit my lyrics so that they were like, they made sense and it wasn't just like me on Google Translate like throwing some random words together.
sure. That's
Yeah.
important. I mean, you
Yeah.
do want a through line with the song and it makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Cause I mean, I would never want to disrespect the culture. And I actually feel like I have a lot of admiration and respect for that culture specifically. Um, so that was like my first love letter to the Catalan community, I think. And uh, I want to write a couple more, if anything, like in that language. And I eventually want to move over there and like totally immerse myself in that culture. And the cool thing is, sh- there is like a musician slash radio DJ out there who like picked up on that and has been playing that tune out in the radio stations over there and stuff like that. And yeah, it's like to them, it's like funny, like why is this California beach Mexican guy like so writing a song in Catalan? Like that doesn't add up or make sense. But in my head, it does. Like I I I just like it's like a very poetic language, just like Portuguese is, or just like French is, or Italian.
Yeah, there's certain flow to it.
like
So
the,
it's whatever language it
yeah,
is. Yeah,
like language with like the Latin roots, so
sure. What's another language that you'd like to learn how to speak?
I think I just named them, to be honest. Like Portuguese, I can like read pretty well, and like I understand the context and all that. Italian, I think I would be grateful with just those few, and specifically Catalan too. I think those would be my top three. Anything else after that would just be bonus.
We touched on this earlier a little bit, but do you enjoy touring? Is that something that you like look forward to? Like, all right, we're out down the road and we're traveling, but we got to play this music. How do you feel about that? I mean, you really do like it, right?
I mean, I personally, I personally love it. Like I think there's two types of musicians: the ones that enjoy being on the road and the ones that don't. Doesn't make them better or worse. I have friends that are amazing musicians that I know that they don't really enjoy being on the road like that. But for me, it's like I shoot two birds with one stone because I get to see places, I get to travel, I get to walk, I get a thrill out of like waking up somewhere I've never been and walking down a random neighborhood I've never been and getting a cup of coffee and getting a sense of what the everyday life is in that place. It's like it's it's a it's a great feeling. And I always say like touring is like you're like in the circus, like you show up one somewhere one day and you set up shop and you entertain the local townspeople, and then you disassemble, pack up, and go to the next spot the next day. Like, it's like if like you can't take yourself too seriously, I guess. But no, to answer your question, like I really do enjoy it. I love being nomadic, like I said, and traveling. And I really hope that that feeling stays the same for a long time. I don't imagine like it changing anytime soon because I feel like, as I mentioned, my first tour I was 17. So like I think by now I would have known if I didn't like it. Especially after like my early 20s of like we didn't really know how to tour. We just kind of went for it, and all the my old band and like DIY shows. And I remember once at South by Southwest, we didn't even have a place to stay, so I slept on the roof of the van. Like that, I don't know, I'll never forget that night. Like we have some gnarly stories on the road, like getting stuck in the middle of nowhere, the vans broke down. I mean, but it's all those experiences that you learn from. And as time has gone by, things get a little better, the shows get a little better, the pay gets a little better. Some of the shows will provide hotels, like now Airbnb is around, so I can like Airbnb us if I need to. Like, so that's the thing, you hope to see the progress of it. Um, so yeah, I will only continue to enjoy touring, and I look to have a busy touring schedule next year.
How many people do you bring on tour, or like in the latest iteration of the last tour cycle? How many people did you bring with you?
This is kind of more like BTS stuff, to be honest. Like it just depends on your budget too. But I just know that like definitely like in this day and age too, like the skeleton crew is the ones that make the most sense. I almost don't even want to use my band as an example. Like I will use like a friend's band, for instance, that we've played with recently. I won't even put their name out there like that, but they had a a driver, a front of house monitor person, their tech on stage who essentially builds out all their gear and tests all their gear, make sure they have their in-ears, everything. So that's already two sound guys. And then the merch person, and then that's what I mean. Skeleton crew is like the guy who's like the sound guy on stage, like putting all this gear together. He's also the TM, the tour manager. So it's like people have to wear like different hats. And I feel like that band is on another level that I am, like especially economically and like budget wise. And so just to see that, like, all right, in the future, this is how, like, it's almost like if like your tours are successful and doing well, I feel like the ratio is like, let's say there's like 5 people in your band, members wise, like you probably will have 5 people in your crew, at, but at least, like, and then you just want to be mindful of like budgets and finance, and you know, sure you want to employ a few more people, maybe make things easier for you, but just kind of like make the most profit margin. Sounds kind of boring, but it's true.
Sure, sure. It's important, yeah, because
And like touring is
you do
not
want to come back with something.
like
You want to,
touring is not cheap at all.
yeah.
It sucks.
Now I thought those Airbnbs you're ordering, man. There's no way
Yeah.
it can be cheap. Yeah.
No, yeah, for real.
What is your writing process like? Is it by yourself? Are you working with others? You bouncing stuff off of other people, or how does it usually go down for you?
Again, it's kind of like the question with the Spanish and English. Like, I try not to really like
Analyze it
sometimes.
too much, yeah, right?
Right, right, because like I've gone this long making songs, somehow something is happening. Like I kind of feel like I always remember Erica Badu saying like, even if you're not writing in that moment, you're still downloading. You're downloading life. It gives you something to write about. Um, so sometimes it could be a chord progression. Sometimes it's like a hum in my head, and I record it on my phone. Sometimes it's a phrase that stands out, like Caballete del Mar, that stood out. So then I worked my way backwards. Sometimes it's like inspiration from old songs that I like like, oh, that's, or like, you know, now that I collect way more vinyl the last few years, I'm way more into the idea of like how a song sounds when you put the needle on it and it starts spinning. Like, versus before, I feel like I would, like, I guess just like the production style too, like I'm like, I hear break beats, I hear like funky bass lines. Like, what if you start from just the bass line and work your way from there? Um, so I just feel like there's different avenues to end up at the result of a song. Um, and then so I just kind of try to keep all those open. Yeah, and like I said, just try not to like put too much pressure on myself or overthink it. And I definitely like collaborating with other people, and sometimes something else sparks out of that.
Sure, sure. Do ideas for songs hit you while you're working though? Sometimes you're like, oh, well,
They
maybe that'll
definitely
work.
have, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's probably honestly like, I would say half the time, especially if it's just like a melody or something I hear, like, and then so like I'll like keep like kind of like humming it to myself for a while. Um, I remember once I was at the coffee shop, and we play music for the customers there, like on the speakers. So I told my coworker, hey, like, can you turn that off for like 10 minutes? I like this melody's playing on loop in my head, but I just need to like sort it out. And like once I sort it out and record it on my phone, then you could turn the other music back on. Cause then like, you get distracted. Or I feel like there's been like so many ideas or potential ideas that I've like toyed around with in that moment, and then they poof, they're gone. Like, so it's almost like you have to like catch it and reel it in while you can.
right, right.
Yeah.
It's like when it strikes, you gotta be able to like, all right, let me retain
Like,
that for later on.
yeah, like when it's hot, like get it while it's hot.
Sure, sure. How many how often do you come up with an idea for a song and you're kind of trying to hash it out, and then you shelve it for like another time? You're like, this just doesn't really work with this.
Man, there's times where it could be short, and there's times where it could be years and years, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's a song on this new record that I wrote when I was like 20. And, there's some people that like a couple of close friends that I've showed it to, and they're like, oh, that's my favorite one on the record, you know. But, and then like that version then was like in English, and now this version is in Spanish. Like I needed to realize that it sounds better in Spanish. And then like who I was recording with really made a difference too. So honestly, It could be a week, it could be a year, it could be 5 years.
We touched on this a little bit. Your last album, that was the debut album, right? For you, for your solo project, right?
Not correct. It is in terms of like being like on a bigger label with more um like, you know, like on a bigger platform, you could say, you know. But I had an EP that came out in 2015, and I had an 8-song record that came out in 2016 as Rudy De Anda. They just happened to be on a smaller label, and those are on Spotify, and all that stuff. But I do feel like this was like, in a way, like it's not, you're not entirely wrong in the sense that like that was like in a way like my big coming out, you know. And that's like where it's kind of this catch 22, like, yeah, like maybe some people think I'm like a newer artist, but I've been going at it for a long time, and I was in bands even before then that we released records and stuff like that. So it was just, I guess, more in the scope of like DIY scenes or DIY labels. So yeah, like it was genuinely a blessing to end up on Coal Mine. It was already one of my favorite labels, and to be a part of it is, you know, honestly, it's felt surreal sometimes. And that's like the kind of label that I've aspired to be on, as far as like, you know, it's like when you like sell like, I don't know, honey or something at the local farmers market, and then like, hey, people like the honey, you know, you whatever, but then now you get picked up and now bring it back to Whole Foods or something, like now it's like shelved at Whole Foods. Now it's at all the other grocery stores. So like more people get to try it, you know?
Sure.
Or like it's like a film. Like I could have put out Tender Epoch on my own and dropped it on SoundCloud or something, but it's like a film that I worked on for a long time. So eventually the label, what they can do is put it in theaters, you know? Like I could have put it out on Vimeo and some people would have seen it, but it just allows you to showcase it for more people. And they have distribution that's in Japan, Europe, Mexico, South America, Canada, like, so like the record gets to travel. And that's like the advantage of being on a type of label like that, you know, where they have like distribution all over, like, and that's what I felt like that record deserved. And, you know, I don't know.
Where the title come from?
Well, I'm always very keen on like, I mean, an album cover, an album name is everything. It's literally everything. Like you go to a record store and it has to stick out, you know, it has to be good, it has to hit, like, and based on like my favorite album covers and everything like that, I I just really try to hold myself to a high standard in terms of like, because that's like the first impression, you know. So how many album names hasn't there been? Like hundreds of thousands, right? So the chances that your title will be unique in any way are very slim to none. So like I've, you know, based on like the literature I've read or my favorite authors and writers and poets, I'm like, the thing I liked about them is like the way that they were able to manipulate, you know, just words and stuff. So I will mention this, you know, it's been long enough, but like for instance, I like this band called Broadcast a lot. Um, and they had a record named Tender Buttons. Um, I just always thought that like it just bounced off really easily, like phonetically, you know, like tender buttons. And like, and then I was like, man, that word tender is like, it's such a, like, it's a very, like, uh, it's exposed, like, you're like, um,
It's raw.
yeah,
It's
like you're
there.
like you're in a state of like, uh, raw is a good way to put it. I'm looking for another word right now too, but it's like, um, vulnerable, you know? That's what the word I was looking for. And then so I always like the word epoch because it's like not a word that you really hear a lot, and it's mostly just used in like historical context for like ages of the past. Um, but in Spanish, for example, we say época all the time. Um, like more often, I guess. Like esa era una buena época. Like that was a good time period. It doesn't sound so like like if I said, oh, that was such a great epoch. Like at sitting with my friends at dinner, it'd be like, what? Like so it's not like such a common used word in English. So therefore, I wanted to find words that are not so common. So then one day I was like, tender epoch, like this is a vulnerable time period. Um, and I'm like, wow, like I think that has a ring to it. And I mean, it took a while, just like the album name for this next record took me a while. But like, it's funny you asked me about this because right now I'm currently like, we're in the final stages of sorting out the next album title and the next cover and layout, which is like like I said, extremely important to me. You know, like like this is like
Yeah, it gives a story. It gives like, hey, this is kind of what the vibe is with this.
yeah, like I'm just like this really says a lot without saying a lot, or you know, it's just I'll show you another one.
It's the visual component to a otherwise like very audio heavy thing. Yeah. Yeah, you kind of get these ideas or the impression of it through these, whether it be like a painting or a picture. I know you did a picture on yours for the Tender Epoch one.
Right. And
Was
so
that
now I intend to switch it up now on this next one, you know,
awesome? That's really
because
cool.
and that's just another nature of it. It's like, well, all right, I did that, so now why am I gonna do that again, you know? Or
Right.
like at least wait a few more records and then do a different kind of vibe. But it's really fun. It's like it's kind of like putting the bows and ties on something at, you know, when like it should be fun. It should be something that excites you to do. Like I just know that my favorite artists were so intentional in the way that they presented their album covers and designed it, and like the subliminal messages and this and that. Like so it's like I'm not gonna spend all this time on this record and give you like a half-ass album cover. Like I want this to be like something that people remember, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
'Cause like I said, there's so much saturation that it's hard to really like stand out, I guess. But I just think as long as I'm doing it for myself, like that's what's gonna radiate with people, you know?
Sure. You so this the Tender Epoch came out in 2020, right? That was the release year of that.
Hmm.
And what
September 2020.
wow. What when did you kind of have that title in mind? While it was it kind of like while writing it or recording it, or did it come way afterwards?
It came afterwards for sure. Um, you know, actually, to be real specific, there's one song, the one that it's track 3 on that record. Here's like a I don't know even remember who told me this, or I think I don't know, maybe I'll take credit for it, but like I always think like an instrumental, for example, is kind of like open-ended, like there's no context of lyrics. So I had done that previously on an old song on one of my old EPs. Um, like since there's no lyrics, no context, you could pretty much name it whatever you want, you know? Like it could just
It
be
doesn't have
it could
any structure to it or
like it
any
could be
bones.
an arbitrary name, you know, like so that's why I had named that instrumental Tender Epoch. And then so when it came time to like name the record, I'm like, okay, cool. Like it it's because sometimes records are named by one of the songs on the record. I think that's a little bit more old school now. But
Mhm.
so I was like, okay, cool, perfect. It's not only like a title of the song, but I feel like it's just a strong title. I would have probably not been able to use this title on a different song of mine because it wouldn't have made sense in the context of the lyrics, you know. So I kind of, it was like a cheat code. Like, I want to use this as the name of the album. Okay, cool. I have an instrumental on the album. I'm gonna name that instrumental that Tender Epoch. That way, it kind of gives it more consistency.
Right. Was that determined before the pandemic or during the pandemic? You're like, yeah, this
Oh
is what
no,
we
it
gotta.
was completely done before the pandemic. If
Ah,
anything, the
okay.
pandemic um delayed the release by like 5 months. It
Gotcha.
was literally gonna come out in March 2020. Like you know, everything's done, the vinyls are done, well, pretty much done. Like, it was all set in stone, and obviously nobody knew what was gonna happen next, you know. And then that's
I feel
kind of
like
like,
you did, Rudy. I feel like you kind of you
but like,
you kind of knew
I've
something
seen a
everybody
lot of
else didn't.
interviews where with bands in the last few years where they're like, yeah, you know, and it's crazy how like this kind of goes along with like the pandemic. So I really don't want to go down that route right now of feeling like, oh my God, like I'm such a visionary, you know, like I don't really want to go down that route. I just think it was a crazy coincidence for sure, because you can definitely describe the pandemic as a tender epoch, you know.
Sure.
But like, if you read the credits at the bottom of the record, I meant it a little bit more too. Like, when I like kind of came up with it was more like, I mean, the world was already obviously dealing with all kinds of, you know, sad things, and I mean, our society is like incredibly backwards, and there's like poverty and, you know, racism, and like it was like, it didn't we didn't need the pandemic to already realize like that the world is in dire straits. You know, like, it was already like that. And so I was just kind of like, um I also meant to like, when people have the sense of loss, like losing a loved one, like you're dealing with something tender, you know, like, so yeah, you know, I lost my dad in 2012. That was like a big loss, obviously, for me. So like, it was like my way of saying like, yo, like, we're all kind of dealing with stuff, and I wish you the best of luck during this tender epoch, you know,
It's a good.
because we all need it. You know, like,
Yeah, it's a good cap off for that. You know, and you kind of like, yeah, here's what it is. Um, how did Coal Mine end up releasing that record? By the way.
um well, like, my friend who was a producer, Johnny Bell at Jazzcast, was like, Rudy, we need to record you a record that's going to get you on a bigger label. That was what he said. And we recorded it. And this was like a year or two before, but um, by the grace of, I don't know what, like, I'm not even religious, but um, somehow an old manager for a bigger band heard it, and he sent it over to Coleman. And since I think they respected this guy's opinion, you know, they just threw it on, checked it out. I remember I was sitting at a bus stop on it, like, I just got in a fight with my girlfriend at the time. I was just sitting there, like, slouched over, like, just bummed out, waiting for the bus. And I was like 29, and I was already like thinking, I'm like, maybe I should just move to Chile, because my friends had invited me to move out there with them. And I was like, you know, I was feeling kind of defeated. And then I look at my phone, it was like a movie, and it says, new message from Coal Mine Records. And I was like, what? You know, and then I look, and they're like, hey, you know, we listened to your record. We just want to talk about the possibility of working with you and helping you put this out. And literally, like, I mean, I don't know, like, I don't want to sound cheesy, but like, literally, like, a life-changing moment, you know, like, it kind of certified and solidified and like justified everything that I had worked so hard for until that moment. Like, so some people do want to hear your music, and it do find it worth putting out on this label, or like, you know, it just like gave me that, like, the wings that I needed, like, when I was feeling defeated. And I'm like, all right, you're about to turn 30, go into 30 with that same energy you had at 20. You know, like, don't, like, this just stamped that all that shit you've done in your 20s, like, it meant something. Like obviously
Validation for it. Yeah.
the validation, yeah, like obviously you need your own internal validation, and like, all of that is more important, but it was just so symbolic, and yeah, exactly the validation that I needed to like be like, yo, like you're still on the right path, like keep going, keep going.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like what a perfect time and place to get that message at
Yeah, I
that
was
moment.
literally like on the verge of like really, really considering moving to Chile and just hanging out and still make music, but just kind of like shift gears.
Sure. Just a bit. Yeah.
And I still like would love to do something like that. And that's why I think moving to Chicago was a great like compromise, because I still get to be in a new place and experience all these new things while still building my music career, and still the long-term goal is to like live abroad.
Sure. What was your reaction when it finally came out after being kind of pushed back a little bit by the pandemic?
Well, yeah, I was like, dude, of course, like I work all my life like to put like a record like this out, and a pandemic happens. First time in 100 years, like just my luck. But yeah, that's self-deprecation, right? But no, once it finally came out, it was like a huge sense of relief, and like this bookend moment too. Again, like that's kind of, it felt like that was the symbolic thing I needed to say, like, all right, I can leave LA now. Like this is the chapter has ended, you know. Next chapter. Like this chapter was called Tendery Park. All right, now the next one, you know. So
Right.
I just felt grateful and proud, and the reception was amazing, and it debuted on 12th on the Latin Billboard charts. Like just to see, like you have your little bucket list, like that was definitely one to be on Billboard, like
Yeah, that's huge.
that's a crazy feeling. And again, it's very validating, and just feeling like it's like, you're I don't know, like just being in the company of like the people like some that you look up to, some maybe you don't, but you like, hey, like there's like heavy hitters right here, like this ain't no like, I don't know. So anyway, like just stuff like that was just very you know, it definitely made me feel happy. I don't know what else to say really. Like I
Yeah,
just felt relieved and happy and grateful, and it's like, all right, I can move on now.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That is really, really cool. You
And just
also,
only, sorry, one more thing, and just to see
yeah,
it next to like at record stores, like for instance, like the way I even did the album cover was I wanted it to look like an old 70s album cover. Like you wouldn't like, is this a reissue or what? But like I saw footage from like this record store in DC, and they had it up next to like more like the Latin world music artists. Like they had it next to some of my favorites like Caetano Veloso or like Arthur Verocai. And just to see like my record next to those records is like, honestly, I don't need any more validation than that.
yeah,
Like to me, it's like that was incredible just to see that.
that's huge.
Yeah.
That is really, really big. Wow, man, that's awesome. And that was in what month of 2020 that it came out?
September.
September. Wow. So we're coming up on 2 years now of it
Yeah.
being out.
And and like it's pretty much the same time I've been in Chicago. Like I left right as the record was coming out.
Wow, that's a good send off.
Yeah, and my friends knew, but like I also knew that that was happening. So it's like all the people that maybe like took you for granted or like lost sight of you, like are like, oh, you want to give me my flowers now? Sorry, I'm gone. You know,
Yeah, that's it.
sorry. Yeah, like if
On
you
to the
find out,
next.
like if you found out that I moved through my Instagram post and not because I told you personally, like what does that say about our relationship?
Right,
Like
right.
like our my close friends and everything, they knew I was moving away. But I honestly kept it kind of under wraps as much as possible, and it was more of a surprise. And that was like kind of my way of like just being like, here we go.
What's the most rewarding part of making music for you?
um I think it's like when you finally like just get this high, like when you start like, well, like really like there's like a certain high you get sometimes, like when you're either playing it live or listening to something. I don't know, I'm very cathartic as a person. It's also part of like my culture, I think. But yeah, honestly, I think those are the like the most rewarding moments where like you reach this high, like you start tearing up, I don't know. And then mix in a little bit of like maybe like when like my favorite artists growing up or like people, and they like know your name and they listen to your music and they like your music. That's also feels amazing. Like, because I could care less if like 100,000 people like the song, but so and so that I listened to their records obsessively for 10 years, like now they, if you know, they follow me now and they look at my stories and like send me fire emojis when I like, you know, like I'm like, this is crazy. Like, how do I have this person's number and like text me like, hey man, you doing all right? I'm like, if you would have told me that in high school, like I would have been like, there's no way, you know, like there's no way.
Right. That's a really special feeling for sure.
Yeah,
Like,
you know,
wow, that's
and
a
again, out of respect, like I don't want to. It's not about name dropping. You know, I'll keep that to myself. You know, it's yeah. I'm not in
it's,
LA anymore. So.
I'll say it for you. It's Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney. That's who
Yeah,
it
with
is. Everyone's got a
Lil,
name.
Lil Wayne.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Lil Wayne. What is the usual audience reaction to you playing your kind of new stuff? Especially those who like you think don't really know you and are just kind of showing up to the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool to see like you physically like visually see yourself winning people over as the song goes on, as the set goes on. That's it's cool. Like, but I just think you just gotta be like yourself, you know, and um genuine as much as possible. Um yeah, it's cool to see people's reactions. Sometimes they're like confused. Sometimes you just see people bopping their heads. I like the confused one to be honest, because it's like, what's going on? You know, like I don't like music to just be able to be deciphered so easily. You know, it's nice that you get listen to it once or twice or three times to really like be like, oh shit, okay, that's what they did there. Um, so yeah, I mean, sometimes I feel like you put out a song and then no one will even understand it for like 10 years or 20 years and be like, oh, like, okay, like, wow, how did we miss this 20 years ago? You know, like that I'm totally fine with that. Like, I don't care if it's all kind of like understood. Like, I don't need that instant gratification in that sense, you know. I'm like, I'm doing this for me. If you enjoy it or like it or cool, like that's great. But this is like a release, you know? Like it's not just like, oh, record release, but like literally like a spiritual release, like or like this is my art, you know. I always like think of like Van Gogh because he never even knew he was famous or popular. You
Right.
know, like he did rub elbows with people like Cezanne and Monet and stuff, which is interesting to think about. But he never really got his notoriety until later on, like post mortem. So I always like to think of him like, yo, he was just doing it. He was just doing it and doing it. And it's not until later on that people saw, hey, like this was actually pretty good. Too bad this person is deceased now. We can't tell them, you know, but
Right.
there's just there's like an authenticity to that, you know, to me, like it's just like art to till a fault, like art before everything.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's a good way of saying it, Rudy. I appreciate you coming on, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. But I like to wrap it up with some promo, you know. So, for those of you who haven't been able to go see Rudy, you can stay up to date with everything that he's doing. Shows, you get some shows coming up, right, in the coming months, and I'm assuming around the time of the album dropping in November, right?
Well, I'm gonna be at Austin City Limits in a few weeks with Adrian Quesada for the Bolero Psicodelicos thing. And then we are going on tour on the West Coast in November, from Seattle to San Diego from like November 2nd through the 14th. And we're playing with the Altons and the Sinceres. But
Oh,
yeah,
that's a great lineup. That's a absolute
but
fantastic
we're
line.
not dropping the record until next year.
All right, next
So,
year. So in the meantime, you can go catch them on those tours, and you can stay up
right.
to date by following you on Instagram. Is that the best place to stay up to date with everything, tour and news and what have you?
I, pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. That's Rudy underscore D underscore Anda, and the music is streaming everywhere, right? It's
Yeah.
wherever people get their music. That's where you are.
Tidal, Apple, all that shit. Yeah. It's
Awesome,
on there.
awesome, awesome. And the people can buy Tender Epoch at coalminerecords.com, right? That's the best place. Killer.
Correct.
Killer. Awesome. Rudy, you're the man, dude. Thank you so much. Do we miss
Thanks,
anything?
Jacob.
Do
Was
promotional
No, I
wise?
mean that's pretty much it. Yeah,
All
like
right.
stay tuned and thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Stay tuned. All right, Rudy, you're the man. I'm gonna stop recording this. I'll talk to you in a minute. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, man.